Welcome to History Hack. If you didn't know by now, we are the revolution. That means we're sharp, witty, lots of fun, but it also means that we're essentially the peasants in Les Mis huddled round a table in the corner of the bar with no money. If you enjoy the show, please do support us. We have a Patreon account by which you can donate a small monthly sum in appreciation of what you're hearing. Alternatively, we have Ko-fi, in which you can just do a one-off donation as a thank you if you particularly enjoy a certain episode. Either way, we massively appreciate all of your support. Hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome to another pole position. I haven't had one of these in a while, so I thought I'd mix it up a little bit. No more World War II. Well, we got World War II scheduled down the line, but I decided to go a little bit out of the box. I've got Dawid Gralik, who is back. He did some Napoleonic shizzle with us a couple of months ago, and I forced his hand into coming to do something on Poniatowski. Many of you have no frigging clue who the hell we're talking about, so we're going to tell you a little bit about him. Dawid, hello, welcome back.
Hello there.
So this time round, we're actually, by the way, FYI to everyone, we're winging this one because I don't create any questions because I want to put Dawid on the spot and wind him up a little bit because I like it when it gets wound up. I don't know, how are you feeling?
We are talking about this time of history when improvising is a very popular thing. For example, in poetry, you got this great improvisation by Mickiewicz, for example. So,
go on, give us a poem. Improvise us a poem. Go on, go for it. Go for it. Do it.
Oh no, please.
We can go on to AI, and I can ask, write me a poem about Poniatowski. Oh my God, I'm so going to do that. Right, I'm going to ask you a first question. Then I'm going to go to AI while you're answering this question, and I'm going to ask AI to write me a poem about Poniatowski, and then I'm going to read it to all of you. And improvisation, God, I can't even talk today. Okay, listen. So most of you have no idea who we're talking about. I have a borderline idea of who we're talking about, enough to probably hold a very basic conversation. But like in literally 2 lines, you got 2 lines and I'm counting. Who was Józef Poniatowski?
Very shortly.
Incredibly shortly. 2 lines, and then we'll actually talk a bit more in depth about him.
To be very shortly, he was a Polish general who lived in end of the 18th century and in beginning of the 19th century during, for example, the Napoleonic Wars. And he was also the only foreigner who became a Marshal of France, which is very significant for this person. So that's why, for example, when people discuss Napoleon's marshals, they also need to say a few words about Poniatowski.
Okay, look, I'm still trying to do this AI thing, so let's. I'm going to make you talk a little bit more. So, Poniatowski, what do we actually know? Well, what do we know about his early life? Because we're going back quite far in history. It's not like, I don't know, we're looking at the 1920s or something.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing because Poniatowski was born in a very specific moment in history because he was born in 1763 and he was born in Vienna. So we are talking about a person from Polish history but born in Vienna. And the reason for it was because his father, Andrzej, was a general in the Austrian army. So obviously he lived in Vienna. And his mother was Teresa Wodkiński. So his mother was a Czech, in fact. And in general, this time in history is a time when cosmopolitanism is very popular, especially among noblemen, or more specifically aristocrats. So this situation where we got, I don't know, a Polish father, Czech mother, I don't know, German-Polish mix, or another variants, it's in fact very, very popular, right? So, for example, that's why Poniatowski quite quickly learned 3 languages because he spoke in Polish to his father, in French to his mother, and to German to other people, right? This was this kind of society when this was this mixture of cultures. And this is this thing. For example, if we say about his nickname because Prince Poniatowski is sometimes called Pepi. And the reason for that is because Pepi is diminutive of the name of the Czech version of name Józef.
What?
Or Joseph.
No, really?
Yeah. So sometimes you can find in Polish literature that Poniatowski is called Pepi or Prince Pepi, and this is because Czech variant of his name. Because his mother was from Bohemia or Czechia, so.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't even know that. That's something. God, you're going to teach me a lot today. Right, listen, hold on. I've generated this poem. Are you ready? Okay, I'm going to read us a random poem. In Poland's land, a hero hailed, Józef Poniatowski, brave and unassailed. Born in the year of 1757, a warrior spirit toiling for heaven. Young Józef, filled with valor bright, through tumultuous times he would ignite. The flames of freedom burned within his soul, a beacon of help, his destiny's role. With sword in hand he rode on the field, a noble general his men would wield. Leading the charge with boundless might, Poniatowski's valor shining in the fight. Against Napoleon's foes he stood tall, from Italy's plains to Russia's frigid sprawl. His army loyal and fierce as flame, together they fought an unbeatable name. But fate's cruel hand would soon befall, as battle cries echoed destiny's call. Upon the fields of Leipzig's submerged in strife, Józef Poniatowski gave the ultimate sacrifice. His regiment shattered, his body defiled, yet his spirit lived on, untouched and wild. For Poland would remember the hero's renown, an icon of bravery, never to be brought down. Now in history's annals, forever enshrined, Poniatowski's legacy, a story defined, a symbol of hope for a nation reborn, a champion of freedom against tyranny worn. So let his name be spoken with respect. Józef Poniatowski, a hero we will never forget. For the hearts of Poles he will live forever, a warrior spirit that continues to... Oh, wait, I read the last line wrong. For in the hearts of Poles he will forever live, a warrior spirit that continues to give.
Not so bad, to be honest.
What historically can we break apart there that was totally and utterly wrong? Because it probably used Google. It probably used, what was it? Wikipedia.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Not like I have Wikipedia open right now, asking you questions from it. Okay. Anyway, against my moving on from my silly poem. So we kind of know what's going on in his youth. I mean, you said his dad served in the army. Is that why he joins in the military, or is there something more before that?
Yeah, I think it was just kind of family tradition because his father and also his grandfather served in the Austrian army. So it was quite obvious for him to be an officer, like members of his family before him. And next thing is that quite quickly he needed to find his way of life because his father died when Prince Józef had 10 years old. And in fact, this was, I think, natural peak for him to be an officer. And also the thing is that this is, by the way, the very important thing that I need to say, that a brother of his father was Stanisław August Poniatowski, who was a king of Poland of that time, right? So
I was about to ask that. Are they related? Now this makes sense.
Yeah. So the king was Prince Józef's uncle. In fact, and after Prince Józef's father died, the king became, in fact, the most important person in his life, because they sent letters to each other, and in fact the king was very interested in Prince Józef's private life and in his education and his career in general, because it was, both family perspective and a state perspective. because he became very important element in king's plans in the future, right? So he was just watching Prince Joseph what he is doing, and he become in fact a stepfather to Prince Joseph in this next years.
I did not realize he was actually a prince.
Yeah, that's because I don't know it exactly, but probably it was because it wasn't a Polish title, but it was German title.
Okay. That's really weird. I mean, you think...
But it was among Polish aristocrats, it was quite popular to have foreign noble titles, because there was no noble titles in Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. So they decided to just have foreign titles, right?
Okay.
So that's why we've got some counts. So counts. So I don't know. Some princess in Poland. They wasn't from royal families, but they have the status there because they got them mostly from the Roman Empire, right? So it was German titles.
Okay, I've got a really stupid question. So we know that his uncle Stanisław kind of frolicked around with Catherine the Great. Is that the right way? Can I say that they frolicked? Do you know if they ever met, or he ever met Catherine the Great?
I think not. There was a thing that Prince Joseph was with Stanisław August in some place that they have a plan to meet with Catherine, but she didn't come. So probably they never met.
Very rude.
But he had contact with her son, Paul, because there was some family issues. But we will talk about it later.
Okay, so where have we gotten to this stage? We had a lot that's going on to this stage. So what happens to him? Well, you've got the Polish partition period, which happens because of Stanisław August. By the way, totally suck at this part of history. Don't quote me for anything I say, because I just know there was a partition period and I know what happened in the partition period, but I still suck at what happens, like how it comes about. So where is he when that's is he in the military by this stage? What is going on?
In fact, when the first petition took place, he was just a child, because the first petition was in 1772, so he was 9 years old, in fact. So he couldn't do nothing. Of course, the situation changed in the next years. So as I said, he served in the Austrian army. He started normally like people from his social group as an officer. He became second lieutenant, but he promoted quite quickly because of his connections, of course, but of course also his talents, because he just was a very talented officer and very brave. For example, quite quickly he won a bet to go through the Elbe River on his horse. And there was also war between Austria and the Ottoman Empire, and he fought in this war. He fought, for example, in the siege of Shabat's fortress. He was badly wounded in that siege, but he saved the life of Karl von Schwarzenberg. He was a very important figure in next years for the Austrians. And in fact, their relationship had a very tragical finish, but we will talk about it a little bit later. And anyway, after this war, he continued his career in the French army. He was officer of the Austrian cavalry, and next he was at the camp of the Empire. He was in this war, but in the end of 1780s, he was asked to come to Poland because the period of Great Sejm started. To people who don't know that, the Great Sejm was the Polish Parliament who became who started a time of reforms in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, because
Hold on. This is the May the 3rd Constitution, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So for people that don't know what the May 3rd Constitution is, please explain why we always have a holiday on May the 3rd.
Yeah, because it's in fact the first European constitution. So we have.
Poles aren't that barbaric. We had a constitution, the first one in Europe. Hello.
Yeah, some people discuss that in fact first was Corsican constitution, but there's some sort of discussions. But in fact, Polish constitution was, I don't know, act was a little bit longer. I mean, as a law. So there is this discussion, but in the Polish Commonwealth was established state, etc. And Corsica was just a part of the Genoa Republic, which was during the rebellion, etc.
So what has all of this? Why? So sorry, let's start again. He's come back to Poland. He's been called back to Poland. The Sejm is basically creating the Constitution of the 3rd of May.
Yeah, in fact,
talk to me. I don't know what's going on. Why is he there? Yeah. What is he doing? What I need to know what is happening, because this is a bit chaotic. He's coming, he's going, what's going on?
Yeah. In fact, this the Prince period started a lot of reforms, also the army reform, and for the state it meant that the army become much larger, right? In the beginning of the 18th century, the Polish army had something like 20,000 men, and the parliament decided decided that the state had to have 100,000 men. So
that's a large jump from 20 to 100,000.
Yeah, five times larger. So what is one of the most important things that the army needs? Officers, right? So the parliament started an action of collecting Polish officers who served in foreign armies, and Poniatowski was one of them. He was talented. He was part of the royal family. He had military experience because he fought in the Austrian-Ottoman War. So he was a natural candidate to be one of the new Polish officers, and he became one of these Polish officers. He became Major General, and he commanded one of the divisions of the Polish army. And he started to train this division. In fact, he did it quite well, I think. But he had a lot of things to do because the state of the Polish army in that time was, in fact, very bad. It was just a mess, and he needed to do many things. Like, I don't know, he needed to start his day, I don't know, at 3 or 4 a.m. and end it, I don't know, in the evening, right? To do
3 or 4 a.m. Does anyone know what time that looks? I don't even know what time that looks like outside. Too early.
Yeah, barbaric time. Yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Anyway, next we've got this whole situation with the constitution, right? That the constitution was established, and it was clear that there will be war between Poland and Russia.
So, why?
Because the Russians didn't like the constitution.
The Russians don't like anything, so.
Yeah, but in fact, they didn't want to have a situation when Poland became a stronger state, because if Poland had more power, they would claim the lands that the Russian took from Poland, right, during the first partition, for example.
Hold on. This is history repeating itself continuously. I can just see it, hear it. Russia doesn't want Poland to be strong because it will take land. Oh no, sorry.
Yeah, and on the other hand, we've got this case of the Confederation of Targowica, which was in fact a group of Polish traitors, which didn't like the constitution, and they want to they want to have status quo before the Great Sejm period. So they asked Catherine to help them to take power in Poland, and she said yes. So the Russians invaded Poland, and there was a war of 1792 between Russia and Poland. And in this war, Prince Poniatowski commanded Polish force in Ukraine. The problem for him was that there was big problem that the Russians had more larger army. So in fact, he could only retreat from Ukraine. But in that time, for example, he won Battle of Zieleńce. It was in fact the first major Polish victory in, I don't know, more than 150 years or something.
Oh, really?
Maybe little less. First time since Battle of Vienna, so 110 years.
16 something was Vienna, wasn't it?
1683, yeah. So 110 years, right?
At least I got the first two numbers correct, okay.
By the way, it shows how deep was the crisis of the Polish army, right?
Wow.
That we've got this 110 years between the two major Polish victories, right? And the interesting thing is that after this victory, the Virtuti Militari order was established. Nowadays, it's the highest Polish military decoration, that it was started after that battle.
And then hold on, do we then still have, so for example, the Virtuti Militari now has 3 classes. Did it have 3 classes then as well?
No, at that time it had 2 classes, in fact, gold and silver medal.
Mm-hmm.
And next, during the Duchy of Warsaw, it had 5. And yeah, there are 5 classes.
No, Jesus, okay.
And since the Duchy of Warsaw period, there are 5 classes.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah, but
5.
Yeah, but
what did you have to do? No, don't. No, do you know what? No, don't explain it to me, because we could sit here for 10 years of me asking really stupid questions and then you having to explain everything to me. No, don't explain. Explain every single class.
Okay. To continue the thread. In general, the war was lost by Poles, and the war was ended, in fact, by King Stanisław August, who became a member of the Targowica. And in fact, the army was furious, and the officers were furious too, including Prince Józef. There was a plan to kidnap the king and to force to him change of his mind. But in fact, the plan was just a plan. They didn't decide to do it. And after that, Prince Józef decided to leave the army. And he had this break from being in the army. And next we've got Kościuszko uprising in 1794, when he decided.
Was Kościuszko involved in any of this with Poniatowski before? Did they know each other?
Yeah. During the war of 1792, Kościuszko was commander of one of the divisions which was in Poniatowski's forces.
Okay. So for the Americans,
Poniatowski was Kościuszko's commander during that war.
So for our American listeners, you have many I'm going to say it in American. If I say this, I think I'm going to say it wrong. But the Kościuszko, as Americans say it, you have many of his statues and bridges and roads and whatnot, because he's also an American hero. So that's the guy we're referring to, if anybody wants to know what we're talking about. Anyway, right, Kościuszko has an uprising.
Yeah.
How do we get there? What is the Kościuszko uprising? And tell us about it.
In fact, the Kościuszko uprising was because of the situation after this war of 1792. Because in fact, there was 2 major things. One thing was that the Targowica became a ruling power in Poland. And second thing was that there was a second partition in 1793 made by Russia and Prussia. So in fact, the Commonwealth lost most of his lands, and in fact, quite deep economical crisis started. And there was also much rage in society and in the army. So Paul started think that we know best, so conspiracy, some like secret societies and things like that. And
Poles know how to do secret societies and underground resistance. We're quite good at it.
Yeah, as Bismarck said, we've got the conspiracy in our blood.
Ooh, like that.
Yeah, so there was a plan to start an uprising, and Kosciuszko became its leader, right? And it started in March 1794. And during this rebellion, Prince Józef decided to come back to Poland, and he became, in fact, one of the Polish generals. He defended Warsaw, but in fact, his service was very tough. In fact, not just because of military situation, but because of political situation, because he was still a member of the king's family, and in fact, most of the people thought that the king was a traitor, and that the king wants to sabotage the uprising. So many people thought that Prince Józef is in fact the king's agent, and his intentions aren't clear. And of course, Prince Poniatowski was an aristocrat, and Kosciuszko was a Republican, right? So this was this quite ideological conflict between them. And in fact, there was also a thing that during the defense of Warsaw, there was an accident that Prince Poniatowski lost an important position from the Polish defense line, and he was wounded during it, and he had to resign. And this was, in fact, the end of his participation in this uprising.
Oh, okay, right. Can we touch a little bit on his personal life? We've done some military stuff.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most interesting things.
Let's do that. Let's talk about his personal. I mean, was he married? Did he have children?
Yeah, the thing is that Poniatowski had never married.
He didn't? Really?
Yeah.
Why?
The thing is quite interesting because when he was young, he fell in love in one of the Austrian noblemen, and he proposed the King Saint of August that, listen, uncle, there is a nice girl over here, I love her, etc., and I want to marry her. But the king said no. When you will come to Poland, we will find you better woman for you from your social position, right? And he was I think a little bit disappointed of that state. And next years he just didn't found, I don't know,
love.
He didn't found. Of course, he was in multiple relationships during his life. There is, for example, a very interesting story that in 1790s he was in relation with Małgorzata Sztańska. She was an actress and opera singer, and in the same time he was in a relationship with her sister, for example.
Say what?
Yeah, and the more interesting thing is that there is a story described by one of the foreigners which lived in Warsaw at that time, that there was a conspiracy made by 3 Polish noblewomen, that they decided to end this relationship between Sztańska and Poniatowski. So they sneaked up to his palace, and they went into his bedroom. And when Poniatowski came back, he came into the bedroom and he saw 3 naked women, how to say, ready for action. And but Poniatowski said, "No, please get out of here," and he just ended.
Hold on, he had 3 naked women in his bed, and he said no.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's it. I don't know how many men would say no if they had 3 naked women in their bed. Hold on, you said I want to know a little bit more about where was. Sorry, I'm not starting to ramble now. You said they snuck into his palace. Which one was his palace in Warsaw?
Yeah, it's the Blachon Palace. It's very close to castle in Warsaw. You just need to go down stairs and you will find the Blachon Palace. By the way, nowadays there is an exhibition there which is connected to Prince Poniatowski because there is a reconstruction of the state of the palace when Poniatowski lived there.
Okay. So it's still standing. That's impressive.
I think it was reconstructed because of the uprising, right?
I'll have to double check that, but it's it's because most of the buildings were completely and utterly destroyed. Well, obviously except for the presidential palace. That's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah.
So that's a different topic. Okay, and are there any other women that were important in his life?
Yeah, you can also find some other women. And by the way, he had a son with this Małgorzata Szitańska. This is the thing.
Is this the only child he has?
No, he had another son with Zofia Czosnowska, and he was born during the Dutch of Warsaw period. And there's also one more important woman, which was Henriette de Vauban. She was a French, and he met her in Vienna before the Kościuszko uprising because he cooperated with her husband, and in fact after some time she came to Warsaw and she became something like, I don't know, informal lady of the house of Poniatowski.
By the way, I've literally just Googled the palace, Palace pod Blachon, which in English is the palace. Hold on. The sheet metal palace, apparently, translated from Google. But yes, I now know where it is. Literally, it's behind the royal castle. That's it. That's how close he was to the.
Yeah.
That's insane. I've got to go down there. I'm going to go down there next week. I like this idea. Okay, so moving on from his interesting love life.
Yeah, in fact, we can say one thing that
sure
that Poniatowski was in fact very popular among women because he was in his younger age. He was just very very sexy man,
charismatic, right? Handsome.
Yeah. But when he became older, the situation was quite different.
Really?
And in fact, there is a very brutal opinion which was left by Raimund Bronikowski. He was a Polish officer during the Dutch of Warsaw period, and because he had an opportunity to show Poniatowski in his bedroom when he was, changing in the morning. And he wrote that, let me say it, I found an elderly person with no hair on his head and a face in wrinkles showing the senile old man.
A senile old man. That's lovely. That's But
the thing is, for example, that Poniatowski lost his hair during his life. So when we see his portraits from the Dutch of Warsaw period, and with his hair, it's not his natural hair, but it's a toupee, in fact.
Okay, so he didn't age like fine wine then?
Yeah.
Okay, so you keep mentioning the Duchy of Warsaw.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what Poniatowski is doing. And first of all, for people who haven't listened to your previous podcast, first of all, tell them what the Duchy of Warsaw is before we go into the whole spiel.
Yeah, in fact, the Duchy of Warsaw was a state created by Napoleon in 1807, and it was created from part of the lands which was taken by the Prussians during the partitions. So, in fact, it was a Polish state which hadn't named Poland, in fact, because of some political reasons. And in fact, it was a French protectorate. It wasn't fully independent state. And Poniatowski had quite significant role in that state.
So tell us about his role. What does he do? Why is he so important?
Yeah, we need to start in autumn of 1806, so before the duchy was created. Because in fact, when the French came to the Polish lands, they wanted to have support of the Poles. And in fact, when in the first weeks, the most important person in the military sphere was General Dąbrowski, and that was because Napoleon knew Dąbrowski, and he could just tell him to organize Polish army. But in fact, the situation became a little bit more complicated during the campaign because the French took Warsaw, and at Warsaw was Prince Józef. And in fact, there was a plan to establish Polish government, Polish authorities, and of course there was a question of personalities who were the candidates to be in this government, and obviously there was a conflict between some groups in the Polish society. There was a group of aristocrats, and of course Prince Józef was an aristocrat. There was a group of Republicans with Dąbrowski and General Zajączek. He was also an important person, and in fact Napoleon decided to give decisive role to the aristocrats. So that's why Poniatowski became director and later the Minister of War. But in the first few months, this decision wasn't very popular among the Polish society. And that's why, because of the reputation that Poniatowski had. And now we need to make a little digression, because we need to talk a few words about the things that Poniatowski did between 1794 and 1806, because in that period he had very scandalous type of life. You know, lot of orgies, lot of parties, lot of scandals.
Really?
Yeah, things like that. So he became, in fact, very unpopular person in the Polish society.
What? Because he was having orgies and having great time and living life.
Yeah. So in general, the Poles thought that it's inappropriate, that there was the partitions, that there is no Polish state, so there is no occasion to have a party.
Yeah,
right?
I guess they're right in a way. If the country's suffering and he's out there having a whale old time, it's kind of a little bit like, shitting on your front doorstep, really.
Yeah. So in fact, the Poniatowski wasn't very popular in 1806, 1807. And of course, there was this thing, political thing between Poniatowski, Dąbrowski, and Zajączek. If you want to know more, you can listen our previous program. I taught there about it much more. And in fact, during this the Dutch Warsaw period, Poniatowski wanted to make his position stronger, because he had to fight for his position, right? He was this Minister of War, but for example, the first commander-in-chief of the Polish army was Marshal Louis Nicolas Davout, so the French. So in fact, when Davout needed to leave the duchy, there was a small competition to the position of the commander-in-chief of the Polish army, and Davout needed to choose between these three Polish generals, so Poniatowski, Zajączek, and Dąbrowski. And he finally decided to choose Poniatowski. And for example, Józef Szymanowski, who was at the camp of Davout, wrote that the quite important role in developing relations between Davout and Poniatowski had Poniatowski's sister. That she organized a party for Davout, and she said that he is a great person, etc. Said a lot of stuff, that he is a great marshal and great commander, that he is the best, and things
Did
like
they
that.
have sex?
To be honest, I don't know, but probably not. She was just very
Enthusiastic.
enthusiastic. Yeah.
It's a good word. She was very enthusiastic or smitten by him. I mean, I'm assuming even though he was apparently an old senile man, he probably did have some sort of charm about him.
To be, I don't know. Probably she just wanted to. She wanted to do the best thing for her brother, right?
Okay, fair enough.
So in fact, Poniatowski became this commander-in-chief of the Polish army. But quite quickly, the war between the Duchy and Austria started, and this war was victorious for Poles. And in fact, of course, there was a big role in it of Poniatowski in this victory. But in the beginning, the situation wasn't so clear, because the war started with the Battle of Russia, when we have this famous scene when Poniatowski led one of the counterattacks in front of his men. There's a painting by Cossack about it. But in fact, this battle wasn't a Polish success, because they needed to retreat to Warsaw, and there was the decision to retreat from Warsaw and not to defend city. So many people think that Poniatowski is a traitor, because he served in the Austrian army. He had a gentleman relation with the Austrian commander, and the people think, oh, look at him, he is a traitor once again. But in fact, it was element of the Polish strategy that they had their main forces on the one side, one bank of Vistula River, when the Austrians have their main forces on the second bank. So the Poles start offensive on Galicia, which was the lands which was taken by the Austrians during the partitions, and the Poles won that way. That they just beat the Austrians during that war. That in general Poles didn't have as many forces as the Austrians, but in fact they got this advantage in Galicia region, right? So this war was victorious, and in fact this war built Poniatowski's position. That's the moment when the legend of Poniatowski started, right? As a victorious commander, right? So there was no Poniatowski libertine, no Poniatowski playboy, but was Poniatowski great commander, Poniatowski hero, right?
I like how his kind of image changes from being this, like you said, a playboy, to now being this amazing kick-ass, basically, commander. From literally the pendulum swings from one way to another. And he's all forgiven. Everything's forgiven. So what happens to him next? I mean, you've got success after success. Where does he go next?
Poniatowski is, of course, the Russia thing, because there was a threat of the Russian invasion. And in fact, during that time, there was a proposition made for Poniatowski to change sides, which was made by Adamierz Czartoryski. It was his cousin or something, and this Czartoryski was a friend of the Russian Tsar, and the Tsar wanted Czartoryski to ask Poniatowski if he wanted to change his side, but he said no. And he warned Napoleon that the Russians wanted to attack the duchy. And of course, we've got all these preparations for war. And in fact, there was all this administrative work which Poniatowski needed to do, because the situation of the duchy, economical situation, military situation was very tough. There was no money. There was problem with bureaucracy. So in fact, Poniatowski had a lot of work to do. His great advantage was that he had many talented people who work with him, like his chief of staff, General Stanisław Fischer, which was in fact the Polish version of Marshal Berthier, or even better version of Marshal Berthier. So they needed to work hard. There was also an opposition in the duchy, opposition of the people who didn't want to see so strong position of Poniatowski, because his political position was quite strong. In fact, there was no control over Poniatowski in the military sphere. Of course, there was a king, there was no prime minister or something, but in fact, he was this top guy in the military sphere. And of course, in 1812, we've got this Russian campaign. Poniatowski became commander of the Fifth Corps of the Grand Army, which was corps created from part of the Duchy of Warsaw forces. And this campaign was in fact very tough from the Poles, especially at the beginning of the campaign, because this Polish corps had something like 40,000 men in the beginning of the campaign, but after 2 months it was only 20,000, without any major battle.
Hold on. So what happened to half of his army?
March losses, because there was a big tempo of marches. Because you know the Russian tactic during this campaign of 1812, that they retreated. They retreated to in the east, and in fact, Napoleon wanted to run after Russians, right? So the tempo was quite big, and in fact, Polish soldiers weren't trained in making so tough marches. There was also a problem like in water with diseases and things like that. There was also an accusations made to Poniatowski, for example, by Napoleon themselves, that the losses are very heavy, and in fact they were very heavy. Like I said, there was a problem for the Polish forces, because this Russian campaign was a different situation than in 1809. But because during that war, the theater of war was quite small, and in Russia this theater of war was very large. So it was a new thing, and there was also problem. For example, with the soldiers, there was many fresh soldiers in the army, and then they just didn't have enough health, enough condition to survive. So in fact, during this 2 months, we've got first major battle of Smolensk, when Polish forces fought quite well, and after that we've got an episode called a meeting of conciliation, because Napoleon visited the Polish forces and he said, "Okay, Poles, you fought very well." He said a few kind words to Poniatowski also. So it was after criticizing Poniatowski in this first few weeks, then we got some props made to Poles in that battle. And next we've got Battle of Borodino, which was the biggest the biggest battle of that campaign, and Poniatowski commanded his corps on the right flank of Napoleonic forces. And there was a problem because terrain was very tough to fight, because there was mostly forests. And in fact, fighting there wasn't very successful for the Poles. There were big problems to fight with Russians. But in fact, they conquered the position that they needed to conquer, but with big losses and big waste of time. And next we've got this whole conquering Moscow, whole retreat thing. And during the retreat, there was an accident that Poniatowski get injured because Poniatowski fell from his horse. Because there was an ice and things like that, and he had an accident, and he became injured, and he came to Poland.
Did he recover from this injury?
Yeah, but it took him a few weeks. And of course we've got this Kadashovic of the Russian campaign, and the question was what to do next, right? Because some Polish politicians decided to start negotiations with the Russians to change sides. And in fact, Poniatowski was he didn't like this idea, but he needed to respect the people who wanted these negotiations. And that's why the reason why he chose to retreat to Krakow, not retreat to Germany strictly, but go to Krakow. And there was in Krakow there was negotiations made, and in fact, Poniatowski decided to stay on the Napoleonic side. But in fact, it was a quite tough decision for him. There is a story wrote by his friend that one morning he came to his apartment and he saw Poniatowski sitting on his bed with two guns nearby his bed, and he asked what it means, and Poniatowski said that he considered if he want to leave, right? So he was close to commit suicide, in fact. So it was a very tough decision to him to decide that he stay on the Napoleonic side.
Wow. Yeah. Quite intense, really.
Yeah.
Does anything positive happen after this? Is he...
To be honest, no.
Oh, for God's sakes. Can't you give me something? Where is there happiness in Polish history? There is no happiness.
Yeah, sorry. Polish history.
Fine. Okay.
In fact, the Polish forces came to Germany to be part of the Napoleonic army. They fought in the campaign of 1813, and that was in fact very successful during the campaign. They fought very well, much better than in 1812. Poniatowski himself was commanding very well also, and all of this ended during the Battle of Leipzig, in fact. And this is one of the most important things that during the battle, Poniatowski became a Marshal of France, right? To this day, he is the only foreigner who became a Marshal of France. But interesting thing is that there is no official document when Poniatowski is signed as a Marshal of France. For example, because Poniatowski was promoted on October 16th, and there is a report from October 17th made by Poniatowski when he wrote that his corps have many casualties, that they're close to be run of ammo, but they hold their lines, etc. And he signed himself as Józef Prince Poniatowski, General Commander of the Polish Army, right? So he was this French Marshal, but there is no document he signed as Marshal of France. He was this Marshal, in fact, by 3 days.
Oh wow!
Yeah, because during the last day, Poniatowski got order from Napoleon to cover the retreat of the Napoleonic forces.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the story that the only bridge which was a way out from Leipzig was destroyed too early, and big part of the Napoleonic forces were cut off, and Poniatowski needed to go through Elster River, but the current of the river was rushing, and Poniatowski was wounded 3 times during the battle, and he was just too weak, and he drowned in Elster River. And his body was found a few days after the battle. The thing is that one of the persons which said that this is Poniatowski's body was Schwarzenberg, right? So this guy who was rescued by Poniatowski in 1780s, right? Because they fought against each other during the Battle of Leipzig. So that's why I talked about this tragic ending of their relationship, right?
How old was Poniatowski when he died?
He was 50, right? Yeah, 50.
So it's still a young man at the end of the day.
Yeah. So we are close to anniversary, in fact, 210 years.
Oh wow, it's a long time, but I mean, this isn't really the end of Poniatowski. Okay, we're going to go roll with this line. He was a playboy, but also a very good general, right? You can be both.
I think about it, I think that Poniatowski is a very underrated general. For example, if we see, I don't know, like things like, I don't know, ranking of the Napoleon's marshals, right? Poniatowski isn't in the top of that rank, and it's wrong, I think. But because, of course, he was a Polish general, he was this French marshal by 3 days only, but in fact, he was this marshal, right? So we need to consider his entire career, and his entire career was quite successful. Of course, there was some decisive moments, like, I don't know, part of the War of 1809, or I don't know, part of the Russian campaign, when he made some mistakes and when he was quite passive, because he used to use elements of the Austrian art of war, which was I don't know, a little bit inappropriate to the Napoleonic art of war. But in fact, he was very, very successful general. He was a good organizer. He was a good general. He won the war of 1809 in a situation when he has a smaller army. He won, I don't know, Battle of Chirikovo in 1812 when he had 3 times less soldiers than the Russians. So there's a big number of things that we can say about him. But other thing is that he's quite unknown marshal of France or Polish general in the West. So that's why we have this episode, right? To make him a little bit more popular.
Exactly. I mean, you come to Warsaw and you find a statue of him. Not many people know this.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I love to do when I tour around Warsaw is to show the statue, because it stands, for those people that don't know, it stands in front of the presidential palace. However, Dawid is going to tell you a little bit more about the statue, because that is not its original place. Dawid, tell us more.
Yeah, it isn't. In fact, the story of this monument is very interesting, because the story of this monument began quite short after a few years after Poniatowski died, because there was a decision to make this monument of Prince Poniatowski in Warsaw, and the Tsar Alexander, who was the king of Poland, also in that time agreed to have this monument. And as artist for this monument was chosen Bertel Thorvaldsen. He was quite popular Danish artist, and the problem was that this monument wasn't created before the November uprising. So in fact, if I remember well, it was created finally in 1832. So 1 year after the Prussian War ended. And in that time, of course, the political situation was quite different because, in fact, the Kingdom of Poland was occupied by the Russians, and they didn't want to have this monument in public place. So it in fact became a present for Ivan Paskiewicz, who was in fact governor of Poland. At that time, this monument was in his palace in Russia, and this monument came back to Poland in 1922, so after the Polish Bolshevik War, because it was because of the Treaty of Riga that the Russians needed to give the Poles the things that they robbed in Poland during the partitions. So this monument came back to Poland, and it was in Warsaw, but not in the place that it is now, but in the area of the Saski Palace, right? Which is destroyed nowadays, but there are plans to rebuild it.
Yeah, they're doing excavations right now. So if anybody's around Warsaw, go ahead and have a look at the excavations that they're working on. Really interesting stuff they're finding. Maybe we need to get one of their archaeologists on board so they can come and tell us the kind of really cool stuff that they've found. Yeah. Okay, so tell us a little bit more. I mean, because obviously we've been sitting here and talking forever, but people can sit and suck it up. The one thing before we do finish, I want to know a little bit more about his legacy. I mean, we know about this one monument. Are there more monuments? Are there any? Let me phrase this different. Is he portrayed in any films? Oh, hold on. Isn't he being portrayed in the new Napoleon film?
To be honest, I don't know, but probably not. I don't think so.
Oh, well, that kind of sucks, really, doesn't it? But otherwise, is he?
It's just a film, you know. It's too short. It's too short type of of cinema to create a person like Poniatowski. But he deserves a Polish movie. That's
not just the Polish movie. Maybe we just need to pitch him to get a TV series, because if you've got a Playboy, I mean, come on, that sells. Sex always sells, right? Yeah. So and then you've got Napoleonic stuff, Polish stuff, and because everybody loves a bit of Napoleon. Not everybody, but I think Sam loves Napoleon, hates Napoleon. I never know with her, but. Basically, it would be really fun to have like this Playboy guy who then becomes this amazing general. I love it. Who do we pitch this to? I've got to anybody listening, and you want this idea, get Dawid on board. He'll be your historian consultant. I'll just come to make trouble.
Alina has my number, so.
I think it's a great idea. But is there anything before we finish? Is there anything that we know, like? In popular culture on him, or is he just like you said, he's just forgotten?
To be honest, nowadays he isn't a very popular person, but it's kind of obvious that the people from more ancient history are not so popular in the Polish history. Maybe some exceptions from the 17th, century, like, Polish winged hussars and things like that. In fact, Poniatowski was a very popular person, but in 20th century. In that time, he was a very popular person. But now, in fact, he isn't. And I think that most of the Poles, I don't know, when they go through the Krakowskie Przedmieście and they saw Poniatowski's monument, they're wondering who is this guy, right?
I got to tell you, that statue, actually, I really like it. It's got this Caesar type air about it.
Yeah, and it was very controversial in the Polish society because of this style. Because most of the Poles thought that this monument to be something like, I don't know, Poniatowski in his general's uniform, his Polish chapka thing, peregrine.
What, like Napoleon?
Full glory, right? And they say, what? That he is like Roman emperor? What the hell is this?
Well, I mean, He was a great general. Come on, give the guy a good statue. You don't want to just have him standing there looking forlorn.
I think that Poles wanted to have this monument more in the Polish style.
Why do we need everything in a Polish style?
Because we are Polish.
Mix it up a little bit. Okay, you got one more anecdote. Tell us. What is this anecdote about? You're so excited that I'm just going to have to let you do it. Go on.
Yeah. The story took place before the partitions. It was early 1790s. And it was a bet made by Poniatowski that he will run through the city naked on his horse.
Sorry, what? Hold on. He makes a bet. Explain, how does this bet come about?
The bet was that Poniatowski needs to ride naked on his horse through the whole Warsaw.
But why?
I don't know.
Okay, so it was just anyway. Keep going.
It was just a bet.
Okay, keep going with this bet.
And he won it.
Hold on, he rode naked through the city.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Wait, how old was he at this stage? This was before the second partition, did you say?
Yeah.
So he'd have been in his 30s?
Yeah.
Okay, so theoretically he was still good looking.
Yeah, he was. The thing is that whole balconies and things like that were probably full of people. So writers say that. And
how many people witnessed this?
You know, they just see it. They just saw it.
Okay.
There's a naked man who is running through the city, and let's see it.
Okay, so how many people wrote about it? Let me rephrase that. How many witness testimonies have you found of this event?
Few.
Do they all say the same thing, that they're absolutely horrified, or are people laughing about it?
To be honest, I don't know. They were, I think, interested. What's going on over there? And the funny thing is that the king was furious about this episode, and Prince Joseph got banned of the court.
No.
That he had no entrance. But there was a second bet that Poniatowski and three other guys will go naked in the carriage before the king and the army.
Did he lose that bet?
No.
So he didn't have to go naked in front of the king?
No, they went naked in this carriage before the king and the army.
So not only does he run naked through the streets of Warsaw, he also goes naked in front of the king and Jesus. What?
Yeah.
How?
The thing is that some people say that the king didn't recognize Prince Joseph, so he didn't have any further restrictions on him.
So basically, he kind of got away with it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
In Poland, we can say that it's Olanian fantasia.
Okay, I'm going to promise not to lose any bets to anybody and have to end up running through the streets of Warsaw naked, and nobody wants to be saying that anytime.
No, Prince Joseph won this 2 bets, right?
Oh dear. No, I'm not doing it. So, okay, Dawid, listen, we've got to get you to come back to do like Dąbrowski, and then we can sit here and sing in Polish. No, yeah. I'm kidding. I'm not going to make you do that. But you've got to come back and do Dąbrowski. We've got to do something on Kościuszko because he'd quite appeal to our American listeners. Because there will be
another sign of the uprising next year. So.
Oh, well, then let's do that. Let's hold off for the next year, and we can do something there. I think it'll be really great. Dawid, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. This has been so great and a great gap that I've just been dying to fill. So,
yeah, thank you very much.
Our incredible guests give us 45 minutes of their time to join us and talk about their work or their new book. This is just a small taster. As a result, we have launched our very own bookshop on bookshop.org, where you can find our guests' latest books, you can support them, and you can support us on History Hack. 10% of every sale via our bookshop supports the podcast and allows us to keep going and bring you more top-of-the-line guests. You can find our bookshop at bookshop.org/shop/historyhack or search for us in the shop section. Thank you so much for your continued support. We really appreciate our listeners and supporters. So make sure you get down to the bookshop and grab yourselves a new book.